Good evening, everyone. Hello, my name is Katrina Eisman. I'm the chair of the Master's in Digital Photography program here at the School of Visual Arts. I'd like to welcome you to our Fall I3 lecture series. It's my pleasure to introduce you to a good friend of mine and a great photographer, Ira Block. Ira has, I can say with confidence, has the dream job that many of us in this room would like to have. He's traveled countless miles, close to 2 million in one airline alone, all 7 continents, every altitude possible, right? And has worked with a wide variety of people, and he's primarily known for completing over 30 stories for National Geographic, and both in video and still. The reason we asked Ira to speak here today is you've got somebody here who's got this dream job. He's been doing it for, we say, 30 years?
Long time, yes.
Yes, long time. And I really wanted to know like a little more about Ira, where he's come, what he works on, but also how he stays inspired and how he stays up to date. And so I think this is going to be a really special evening. Of course, the pictures are going to be fabulous. But there's a great opportunity for you to really get to meet somebody that stands behind that fabulous magazine with the yellow border in 3D.
In 3D?
Yep. And so I'm really thrilled. I'm so glad you're here. Please help me welcome Ira Block.
Thank you, Katrin. Thank you for inviting me to images, inspiration, and ideas. Yes, it's a great topic, a great way to start, a lecture series. And one of the things that keeps me inspired and gives me ideas is teaching. Many years ago, I've taught here when Katrin first started the course, and I continue to teach. I do a lot of workshops, and what I find is that teaching is a way for me to learn. I have students that see differently than I see. I have young students, old students. It's learning knowledge and learning what other people are doing that really, I think, keeps you motivated. And I like to quote Henry David Thoreau, who said, "It's not what you look at, it's what you see." And my job has taken me over the last 30 years or longer to all sorts of great places where I've met great people, understood new cultures, learned survival techniques, and just had a good time. And what's nice is that what I've done and what I've done over my career has gone way beyond what I ever could imagine doing. It's beyond just, it's been so great, but it's not always easy. It's not the thing where you look at the magazine and go, oh, that's a nice picture, I could have taken it. There's a lot more involved. But what I want to talk about tonight is inspiration and what makes me keep going. When Katrin first asked me to do this, she said, why don't you talk about what a seasoned pro does to stay inspired? And I'm thinking, seasoned pro, that's a euphemism for an old guy. But Katrin is very...
With wine, it could be good.
Yes, like yes. So, photography has always kept me busy, inspired. It's just great taking pictures, great meeting people and doing things. So just being a photographer is inspiring for me. And I've always been looking for new ways and new technology and new vision to do my pictures. So let's start looking at a couple of pictures here. These are some of combination of some older pictures, some newer pictures, some on film. Does anyone know that word? Film? Remember that? Try, this picture was done on film. On digital, it'd be a lot easier, but this was painting a cliff dwelling with strobe and other lights and the luminarios, these little candles in paper bags. Very complicated shot. Had to do it on film, and you only have maybe a half-hour window and the sky is the right color. So for a shot like this back then, I set up 3 tripods, different camera on each tripod, different exposure on each camera, because each exposure was about 15, 20 minutes, and I didn't have time to bracket. So by having various cameras and then getting one roll of film developed first and seeing how that exposure was, I was able to figure out where I should be with all this. Simple pictures, but nice compositions. I was in Istanbul, when was I there? In October, October, November. And it was just fun shooting these scenes and just waiting for things. So I've got this mosque, it's looking great, but waiting for the birds to come by just to, fill in the sky, give me an extra dimension to my photo. And doing different things. I was photographing these guys preparing to go into the mosque, and I had all these pictures. I'm always looking, I'm making myself crazy. He's turning sideways, good profile, his back is there. The colors are all right. I had a whole series of pictures, and this guy walks in. But I thought, this is different, this is new. It's a different, he's framing the picture, it added to it. I try to get out of my old way of thinking. This is in Mongolia, and I know Katrin loves camels, so I put this in. And these are Bactrim camels. They have the 2 humps. And then last week I was in Morocco, different lighting, different setup. I'm actually on one of the camels, and these guys only have 1 hump, but nice curves and things going on. So I'm looking for all this stuff. And even, I never did much sky photography or astrophotography, but I was in Mongolia, and I look outside my tent, and I was going, my God, look at, I could see the Milky Way. I live in New York. How often do I see the Milky Way? I do a lot of my work in Asia. It's always polluted there. So I went out and I did a photo of the Milky Way, and I basically took a little flashlight to put some light on this tent, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about doing astrophotography. Sometimes just fun things happening in Cuba, people riding around in the car. I shot this out the window of the car I was in, the reflections of the light, but it was a fun shot. And getting moments. This was in Turkey, and although it seems like a moment, this was a moment that lasted forever. This couple were up there necking, making out, whatever you want to call it, that I could, change lenses, I could, I could have, shot a roll of film and had that roll of film developed, right? That's how long they were up there. But it was fun. It's, if you're not having fun taking pictures, you shouldn't be taking pictures.
Now, do you get a model release from that?
Did I get a model release from him? No. So I can't use it. I cannot use it commercially, but I certainly can use it editorially. And I do have their email. So if some reason I ever needed a model release, I would, get in touch with them. And the early days, where I started taking pictures when I was in high school. And I loved it. I was film, and I had a dark room my dad built me, and it was great watching prints come up in that tray. It was magic to me. And when I got to college, I had other plans. I was going to be something else. And I started longing for the darkroom, so I joined the student newspaper so I could use their darkroom. I started taking pictures at basketball games, and the local newspaper guys saw my pictures, and I got hired by the local newspaper in Madison, Wisconsin. And it was great because I was actually going to get paid to take pictures finally. And that's really where I learned a lot of my photography skills, because you'd run out, you'd have to shoot a job, come back, develop it, get it out, go out to your next job. So you learned by your mistakes very quickly. And even then I was trying to be innovative. And this is kind of funny. Because I was low man on the totem pole, I was doing all these group shots. And instead of doing a flash on the camera, I would set up 2 or 3 flashes, no light meters, no flash meters, no Polaroids back then, no modeling lights, no umbrellas. I just did, I put a flash out there, and I would say, okay, maybe here, and it's 10 feet, and I'd figure out the f-stop the old-fashioned way. So it's funny pictures, and look, I've got a bad shadow here on his eye. But I was thinking I was innovative. When I got out of school, and I was in school during the Vietnam War years, so I had photographed a lot of protests. Learned a lot. A friend of mine was at the National Geographic as a photo editor. There was a little opening in the door. I went after it. And I started getting assignments from the National Geographic. Complicated, tough thing to do. One of my first assignments, which was crazy, but the director of photography back then just loved taking you out of your comfort zone. There was a lot of money back then, there was a lot of time. He sent me to the North Pole by dog sled. I grew up in Brooklyn. The coldest I'd been had been in Madison, Wisconsin, which was pretty cold. But I went to the North Pole with this guy. And it was a real life-changing experience for me. I learned survival. I learned how to make pictures in terrible conditions. Again, this was film. You're at minus 40 degrees, and when you're winding your camera, if you wind too quick, the film cracks because it's so brittle and so cold. If it doesn't crack, you get static electricity marks. Your lenses are frozen. We had my lenses lubrication replaced with the stuff the NASA was using then, a synthetic oil, so it wouldn't freeze up so much. But I would generally, with say 100 millimeter lens, get a little focus and then fine focus it by moving back and forth. So it was a terrific experience for me. I learned a lot about dogs. This dog did not get the memo that he was pulling the sled, not riding on it. And people think the ice up there is flat. It's not. You get these pressure ridges, and you've got to cut through the ice. So this was a challenge to me, a physical challenge, and a physical challenge will motivate me. And it still does. I try to stay in shape. I try to, I go to the gym all the time. I try to eat right because I like the physical challenge because it motivates me. Another time I got interested in doing a story on olive oil, so I suggested it to the magazine. And I was motivated and inspired by the culture of olive oil in all these different countries. So I did different pictures for the story. It was an interesting transition for me from the cold weather. I got to go to Spain, Italy, and Greece. Not too bad, right? Yeah. And eat a lot of good food and use a lot of good olive oil. Wow. I needed to photograph a baptism. And while I was in Greece, it was during the harvest, and so none of the kids were being baptized. And I got back from Greece and I said, I really need a baptism. And I found a Greek Orthodox Church in D.C. in Washington with a very friendly priest, and he said, yeah, you could come. I'm doing a bunch of baptisms in the next few Saturdays. Come on down. So this was actually done in Washington, but I liked the church, had nice colors. And in the Greek church, instead of just using the oil to make a cross on the child's head, you actually dip the child in this vat of oil and water. And I asked the priest, has anybody ever slipped out of your hands? And here, the child looks even more slippery because this is film, but I was using available light plus a little strobe, which gave it this ghosting effect, motion and then strobe, and it made the child look even more slippery than he really was. Another story I did, which meant a lot to me, was about September 11th. I was in New York on September 11th, and I spent some time down at Ground Zero. And when the 10th anniversary came, I said to the magazine, we've got to do something on this. And they said, well, it's kind of a sad story, and we don't usually do sad stories. And I thought, well, let's do something about the people that survived. Let's do something about the people that got out of the building and moved on with their life. So that's what we did. We found some survivors and we interviewed them, we spoke to them, and I decided to do portraits of these people in a studio. And let's see, so this is actually the first time 6 months after September 11th in March 2002 that they put up the twin towers of light. And you could see it's still a lot of light here from working at Ground Zero. Yes, I shot this from the Empire State Building, good. And I shot it on film. I shot it on a Hasselblad, a medium format Hasselblad, from way up on the top, above the tourist deck. And I remember when I was up there, I met another photographer that was up from the New York Times, and he was shooting digital. And he had so it's 2002, some very basic digital camera. And he was having problems because at the top of the Empire State Building are all the microwave and TV dishes and his camera. So I just had an old mechanical Hasselblad and cartoon. And it was great because the Statue of Liberty shows up. I've got the twin towers of light, the light from Ground Zero. So 10 years later, I decided to do these portraits. I was very careful about how I was lighting these people. One of the things I wanted to do was make sure I had the right catch light in their eyes. That's how careful I was about these shots. Just the different shapes of the catch light in the eyes, because I wanted it to have a special feel. And I also asked people to bring something if they had anything that they took out of the building that day. So this fellow had the shoes he wore going out that day, and he never cleaned them. And this woman ran out of her office, and she carried a picture of her children with her. And this firefighter, the rest of his unit, the rest of his group, got stuck in the building and perished, but he got out, and he was just in some area of the building that was protected because he was by the air conditioning units, so the floor was strong, so when the building collapsed, he was in a pocket that didn't get crushed. But the force of the air coming down made his helmet come flying off, and 3 months later, one of the workers digging in the rubble found his helmet, and he saved the helmet, left it in the condition it was in. So I came along and I photographed that. And here was a mother and daughter I first found the daughter. I was shooting the daughter, and you've got to ask questions of people. You have to engage them. You learn so much. And she was telling me, oh yeah, my mom was in the same building on a different floor, and until about midnight that night, neither of us knew if we had gotten out. She said it was very scary, and I said, oh God, that's incredible. I've got to photograph you and your mom together. And she said, my mom will never come back to New York City. I said, where does she live? New Jersey. So I took all my crew and we went out to New Jersey. We rented a big conference room at a hotel and rebuilt the studio just to do this one picture because I thought it was so important to the story. Photographers like toys. They like to buy cameras, buy new lenses, buy computer equipment now. So in some ways, technology keeps you going. You get a new camera. Wow, that's great. I'm going to do something different with it. But technology has also made picture taking so different. Of course, the biggest change in technology for me was going from film to digital. How many people here actually shot film at some point in their career? Oh, that's a good number. I'm surprised. But like most photographers around of my generation and age, we resisted digital. First of all, in the beginning, it wasn't that great, and it was complicated. The computer programs weren't as good. But eventually, I went into digital and then I embraced it. And even now, the technology is making photos that were impossible possible to take. And just a couple of weeks ago, I was in Morocco and I did this picture, totally lit by candlelight in the middle of the desert. This was at ISO 51,000, right? 50, let me just double check my notes. Yeah. All right, one of these, one was at 40, one was at 50,000, slight difference, right? But 51,000 with the Sony A7S, and it was incredible. The picture is brighter than what I was seeing while I was there. And we did some noise reduction in Lightroom, not a ton, and I think this week we're going to make some prints. I'm going to make some 17 by 22 prints because I want to see how they look printed. But this is a picture I couldn't have done before. I remember in the days of film, if you could push your film to your color slide film to 400, wow, that was a high ISO. Now I'm doing this thing at 50,000. And I was able, because I was at 50,000, I was able to shoot, I think probably around 125th or 250th of a second at f2. So I was able to stop the motion. And I was able to stop the motion here during my birthday party in Morocco. And I think I did some of these at 102,000, but this is not one of the ones at 102,000. So this is 50,000 at probably like a 250th at f2 because I needed a high shutter speed because she was busy dancing. And again, it's amazing. The technology has made certain kinds of pictures possible. And that motivates me. It motivates me that I could take pictures more of the time than I was before. I could go into situations and not have to bring in all my lights and ruin the feeling or disrupt people. So it's a new avenue that's open to all of us. You could come up with new story ideas, new creative ways of shooting pictures because of this. It's just great. What's the highest ISO anyone here has shot at? It's like 6,000, 3,200, 6,400, right? I think the Nikons and the Canons look okay at 6400. Okay, 6400, 12,000, 24,000. This is like three more f-stops or 3 more shutter speeds.
Do they give you a hard time when you use this type of ISOs numbers, like 50,000?
Does who give me a hard time?
For example, National Geographic, would they give you?
Well, I haven't. This was a new picture that's not. It wasn't for them, but they would use it. I'm looking at the quality of this picture, and I think it's usable. You could, especially in National Geographic, even a double page is not that big. So again, I'm going to try and see what it looks like printed to see how it looks. The noise isn't bad, and the nice thing about the noise here is it doesn't look like electronic noise. It looks more like grain, like when I was shooting Tri-X, shooting high school night football games at, 1600 and what, Acufine, you remember that? Acufine, Diafine, all, it's just, so, and when we're talking about toys, I was in Lumbini, Nepal, which is the birthplace of the Buddha. And we're in the middle of nowhere. I wanted to do an aerial and I needed an aerial view of the whole thing. I couldn't get a helicopter or a plane. It was a lot of paperwork, a lot of money. One of the archaeologists had this balloon and was doing balloon photos of the site. And those photos are straight down images. But this guy was a smart guy, one of these guys that could build or do anything. So I said, I've got a small camera with me. You think we can mount it on there? But I don't want to shoot straight down. I want to shoot it at an angle. He said, oh yeah, we could do that. So we put this little lightweight camera on there. And this camera, we had no video assist, no remotes. Like, now you could have a drone up there. It'd be great. I didn't know what we were getting, so he took this, which was an intervalometer, with a little piece, and he re-rigged it so it would fit my camera because it was rigged for his. So it would push the button every 10 seconds or every 5 seconds. This is rudimentary. We just, okay, let's put it up. But he was great at flying the balloon. He had an idea of the angles and stuff. So he put this thing up, and it just started taking pictures, and then we got the camera back, and not a bad picture considering no one's looking through the viewfinder. We're just sending the damn thing up there. So I was, that was pretty exciting for me to do. And while I was there shooting, there were pilgrims coming to the site. I didn't want to be up in their faces taking pictures. So I set up a camera on a tripod, I set up a strobe light, and then I tethered everything to this computer, and I was able, through live view, to sit back and get pictures. And I thought I was being very clever by camouflaging my equipment in these scarves, which I don't think did that great a job of camouflage. But anyway, I managed to get some interesting pictures out of this. And this one this was actually climbing up on someplace, and I got bolder as the days progressed. In the beginning, I was trying to be as respectful as I could be, and then you start pushing it. Oh, could I get in a little closer? Is this really going to bother people? Are the guards really going to start yelling at me? You just start pushing it and pushing. And next thing you know, I'm climbing up on these things with a camera and a handheld strobe, and no one's noticing me. But what did happen from this, which was great, was I became inspired to do images of the life of the early Buddha. And I've been traveling a lot in Asia anyway. I've been to Bhutan, Nepal, and so I just started shooting more and more on Buddha. And this was a child at this was actually a Hindu first haircut ceremony. And as you note, they put eye makeup on the child. And some people, I think I put this up on Instagram at some point, and people are going, oh, the baby's crying. You know, come on, you take a kid to a barber shop to get a haircut, he's going to be crying. There's nothing, the kid's not being hurt. He's a kid, he's crying. But when I did these shots, I was walking around with a big strobe and an umbrella system because I really wanted to catch lights in the eyes and get really strong colors, especially with the child with all the black around his eyes. So this was an interesting technique I started using. And as I traveled, I pick up more and more pictures. I'm leaving in a month. I'm going to be in Bhutan again. I'm going to be in Nepal, and I'm also going to be in Tibet. I've never been to Tibet, so I'm always looking for pictures to add to this project on the Buddha. I think it's an interesting, project for me to continue on. Now, these pictures are fairly simple because something is going on. It's in front of you. But a lot of times I get called upon by the magazine to do stories that aren't happening now, stories that happened in the past. I had to work on a story about a global warming that happened 55.8 million years ago, which is an important story because scientists were looking at that. It was the hottest point in Earth's history, and scientists were looking at it as to how much now is natural global warming and how much was just, from vehicles and other, coal emissions. So I had to come up with ideas on what I could photograph because my time machine was in the shop, so I couldn't, go back in time to do these pictures. There was a scientist I found who had done these core samples. This is a core sample from the ocean floor, and all the different layers on here have to do with complicated ocean acidification, and which tells you a lot about global warming. So he was out in, he's at University of California, Santa Cruz. We flew him in because one of the editors said, photograph him in a swamp because the Earth, even at the polar regions, were swamps back then. It was so warm. So we get him in a swamp. This is our setup. I've got a big C-stand with a brick going through it to weight it down. And we had a couple of locals watching out for alligators. So I thought, oh, this is good. We got the guys, the locals. And then one of the locals, in the middle of the shoot said, hey, are those snake-proof waders you're wearing? And I go, I didn't even know they made snake-proof waders. And if they make them, there must be snakes that, can go through the regular ones. So we're looking for alligators, and I'm suddenly thinking, oh, God, snakes. So anyway, this guy was a great subject, a lot of fun to work with. We had a good time, and this was in, I think, South Carolina in some swamp. Get back, give the magazine the pictures, and at some meeting, one of the editors says, well, Ira, you shot that in a swamp, but isn't that core sample from the Atlantic Ocean? I go, yeah, but you said you wanted it in a swamp. And he said, I think that's going to confuse our readers. We need to shoot that in the Atlantic Ocean or in the ocean. So I called the guy out in California again, and he said, well, why don't you just come out to Santa Cruz? We're right on the ocean. You could shoot it here. I said, no. This is from the Atlantic Ocean. I got to shoot this in the Atlantic Ocean. And I needed to find a place in the Atlantic Ocean where it wasn't too rough. And I remembered going down the Florida Keys. You go down A1A and it's really calm there, so we flew them back and we did another picture. I waited, you know, I had it all planned. Sunrise, the light coming through the clouds, because Florida gets great cloudy skies. And we just did it again. And again, I'm in the water with all this equipment, but it was a lot of fun. And so in the magazine, they ran this picture. Then the other thing I had to photograph, I was photographing a lot of fossils. And photographing the fossils in the studio, I thought was too boring. So I talked someone into taking it out in Wyoming, where it was about minus 15 degrees, to make an interesting picture like this with, you know, the background and filtering the strobe to go warm and then letting everything else go cool. So I had that nice color contrast going for it. And then the other thing was, up in the Arctic, during this global warming, it was swampy. So we had to illustrate that, and I had a picture that I took in a swamp, and so we had a big print made and brought it up to northern Canada. But it was funny because when you're shooting, and especially in something like this, and after that incident with the swamp and the ocean, I thought, you know, I better shoot this a couple different ways. So with his face in it, which says more about him, and then hiding his face. So it becomes less about the person and more about what's going on. And then I thought, well, suppose someone doesn't like the dogs. So I did another shot without the dogs, and the magazine ran the shot with the dogs and without his face. I had a feeling the yes, that word, would, you know, work better for this. But yeah, and you recall that I was at the North Pole with dog sled, so this was a piece of cake with me and these dogs, right? So there was another shot, they liked this idea, and so here I am in Wyoming in this area of parched earth, which also is a swamp. So I brought a swamp picture out with this scientist, but it was really windy in Wyoming, and this print was just blowing all over the place and ripping apart. And when it started blowing, it was catching flare from my strobe unit. It was rolling up. I finally had to call back and say, we got to make a print of this on canvas because it won't rip. And then we put some board around it. Well, one of the things, when it was ripping and blowing, I thought, okay, get it out of the wind, get it to lay flat. And I liked that picture. I thought it was cool. But when they sent me some prints, they sent on canvas, they sent the alligator print I'd shot in a swamp. And I think the alligator read better, so I used that. And then I did the alligator just on the ground, and they ended up using, this is what was published in the magazine. So you never know, but you always have to be thinking. And these are some other pictures. This is, I found a private collector that had a complete fossilized early horse. So again, through talking with people and getting information, you find out about things that are going to add to your story. Now, I want to talk about a favorite subject of mine, baseball in Cuba. So I had been to Cuba a couple of times in the late 90s, early 2000s on some projects. And then about 2 years ago, year and a half ago, the National Geographic sent me down to take a group of their travel people. They're doing all these travel expeditions. They said, well, you know Cuba, why don't you just, take the group down? So I said, well, I'm not a historian, but I know about, I know about photography. So when I was down there, and I've become a pretty good baseball fan here in New York. And when I was down there, I was looking, every place we went, I was seeing baseball happening, and I realized that the Cuban people value the importance of baseball. It's so critical to their history. And in doing research, I found that when they were trying to get their independence from Spain, they said to the Spanish, we're not making bullfighting our national sport, we're making baseball. They've been playing baseball in Cuba since we've been playing in America, the 1860s. Sailors would come over and play. So it was something I really thought, this would be a good story to do. I didn't want to be totally encumbered by the Geographic because they would be giving me dates to do it and when the budget was right. So I went out and found my own financing from a foundation. I got a grant from the Kunis Foundation in Seattle because they're interested in various things and cultural things, and baseball was right up their alley. And then I had to deal with the Cuban government, and one day at my gym in the locker room, there was a guy who I just talked to near the lockers, and he said, what are you doing? And I said, yeah, I'm trying to do something in Cuba. He said, oh, my sister lives in Cuba. She's been there, and she was Fidel's personal documentary filmmaker. She knows everybody. She was an 80-year-old woman, and originally from America. And I got in touch with her, and within 2 weeks, I got total permission from the Ministry of Sports to do this project, which was really, really incredible. So I started going down there and shooting, and I decided to shoot using a certain technique. I wanted to shoot just like the baby getting the haircut. I decided I wanted to shoot with strobe as much as possible so I can get sharp colors, control the background, get people to really stand out. And it's not easy because you're walking around with this big strobe setup and people are looking at you like you're very strange. And the other thing that I had to do, because pretty much everyone here is technically oriented, right? Because I had to work outdoors in daylight, and I wanted to overpower the sunlight because it's going to be sunny down there, I needed to shoot at a high shutter speed. And most of the strobe sync is 200th or 250th of a second. And I was using big strobes, and I ended up getting a pocket wizard that would let me synchronize at a 1500th of a second. It cut some of the light out and made figuring out the exposure complex because not only were you dealing with f-stops, now you're dealing with the shutter speed and that was shaving light off. But I was able to go out and actually overpower daylight. So I'm doing, a lot of this strobe work. This one was natural light, but I liked the shadows and the form happening. And I'm not trying to shoot that much action. I'm trying to shoot the effect on the culture of people. Here are some fans in the stands. Here I'm using a combination of daylight and strobe. I like the shape of the light here on the baseball diamond, and this guy was in the batter's box. And I hit him with the strobe, and you can see I'm getting ghosting from the strobe and the available light. I'm just walking around through the stands, getting other pictures. But I also, after a while, I realized I just couldn't shoot their professional baseball stuff. I wanted to get down to more grassroots, what the people were doing. Because the people are very excited. These are fans in the stands again. Here's a guy I found, again, through talking with people, who was a baseball historian. He's in his late 80s, and he lives on the 6th floor of a walk-up. And I was thinking, God, we got to drag all our equipment up there, but he's got to go up and down himself. So, you know, I was always looking for things, and every town has what they call an esquina caliente, a hot corner in their square. And that's where men sit around and argue about baseball. It was great. I think I'm going to have to go back and do some video of it to get the sound and the arguing, because impassioned, incredible images and things going on with these guys arguing about baseball. And baseball has this history. This stadium was built in 1874. It was one of the earliest stadiums well, it's the earliest in the Caribbean, and probably one of the earliest even in the US that's still being used. See, Wrigley Field is 50 years old? What? 100 years old this year? Okay, so this is older than Wrigley Field. And here again, I used, my light to light this up and to make the sky more dramatic. And then, the regular people that are playing baseball, just portraits of them. And what's very unusual is that this kid has equipment. Most of the kids don't have equipment, or they have to share bats and gloves. And I also started doing these are the kind of pictures I normally wouldn't take, with a lot of confusion. I tend to be obsessive compulsive with my photography and make sure everything is very precise. But I started seeing these kind of pictures with things going on, a lot of elements happening. And it was great, I just kind of let myself free on the shoot. And this is by one of the stadiums. The victory will be the sum of the efforts of everyone, right? Does someone speak Spanish here? Yeah, is that about what it says? The victory will be the sum of the efforts of all the people of everyone. And it's great. I got the baseball in the picture, guy going by. This is actually across from the stadium in Havana. And Fidel was a big baseball player. There were rumors that he was trying out for the Washington Senators. I think they scouted him while he was in Cuba, but he never came to play. And this is outside the stadium in Havana, but I love the blue color, and I love the confusion going on. And it was so much fun for me to work and just shoot and not worry about who I'm shooting for. I was shooting for myself. And this was in the town of Pinar del Rio, which actually won the championship this year. So it was great. It was a lot of fun. This guy was quite the character. I like this. Cigars in his pockets, right? It's great. And here, outside of a stadium, here are some kids, and they all gathered around. And for me, kids in baseball were important, because that's where it starts. These little kids playing baseball, and just, hey, I love the dog. What could I say? The dog's in the picture. And this was a little moment. I was out shooting some stuff, and I saw this father and kid getting ready to go on their motorcycle back home, and the bats here. And this is what most of baseball looks like in the small towns for the kids. That's not a real bat. That's their ball. They're hitting crushed cans because that's all they have. And this is how they start playing baseball until they get into maybe a school or with a team. And even then, the team guys are trading gloves when they go to the field. Okay, you're at bat. Could I have your glove? They only have so many gloves, so many balls. In Major League Baseball here in the US, I think during an average game, they use about 175 balls. In Cuba, in the professional league, they keep using the same ball over and over and over because a baseball is $7. So here in the US, it's like, yeah, the ball hit the dirt, new ball. In Cuba, they're using the same ball over and over again. Here, I've got a little video clip of me working on the street at a hot corner. These three guys were sitting around. I'm trying to remember the town I was in. A small town. I went to the square, found some guys talking about baseball, and I asked them if I could photograph them. And so that's the picture I got. I just liked the colors, the background, and then I liked this guy over in the, over in the corner. And this guy has no hands, which was funny because, that's not funny, which was interesting because when we were done shooting, I said to these guys, can I buy you a beer? And they said, sure. So just down the corner, I went and got a bunch of beers, and this guy was able to drink, his beer like that. It was, but he was about baseball. They were all about, baseball and what's going on. So this is still an ongoing project. I'm going to go back to Cuba. I get back from Asia in mid-November. I'll go back in December to Cuba and continue shooting this and probably make a few more trips down there because every trip I learn more and more and I meet more people, and it's a great experience. Now, talking about meeting more people, I can't do this lecture without talking about social media. It's become such a critical part of every photographer's life. And again, it was one of these things in the beginning, I'm going, oh man, I don't want to be on Facebook, I don't want to be on Instagram, Twitter, I just want to be under the radar in my life. But you can't. You cannot do it if you're interested in photography. What's happening is publishing is a dinosaur industry. Social media gets you out to so many people. I post a picture on the Nat Geo Instagram feed, I get 250,000 likes. My pictures are being seen by, those are just the people that like it. I don't even know how many people are seeing it. This is really a new way of communicating. Plus, I read the comments and I get feedback. I get ideas of what people are seeing in my pictures. Sometimes people talk amongst themselves in the comments. It's a new thing and you cannot ignore it. It's a way to communicate. So I don't put up photos of what I had for dinner or my cat, which, do I have a cat? No, I don't have a cat. But if I had a cat, maybe if I had a cute cat, I'd put a couple of pictures up occasionally. And I have put a cat picture up on Instagram at one point, but it was a cat in New Mexico looking through a doorway in an adobe house, so it was okay. So connecting to the world, you can't ignore it. This was a little friend that jumped on my camera phone while I was trying to take a picture, and And someone I was with did a picture of this, and we put this on Instagram. It was a cute little praying mantis. It was very friendly. Unless you're its husband. They tend to eat the males. Different society, different values. So the other thing that doing this and having, I carry a camera with me a lot, but I always have, somewhere, my cell phone with me. And what it's done, it's really woken me up to look for pictures, especially New York. New York, I'm so immune to photos here because I've lived here forever and ever, but now I walk around with the phone, and part of it is a little obsessiveness on my part because I'm always looking for another Instagram. I'm always looking to get my numbers up. But it's forced me to be aware of photo opportunities I've not been aware of before. Get on the plane, get off the plane, I'm looking around. I've got so many pictures at airports, it's crazy. Kind of, different airports, different odd things happening. I was up at Harvard University. I'm working on a documentary for Harvard on 125 years of fencing. And while we were looking at locations, I went into this eating hall that looked, and this is where they filmed, I don't think they actually filmed it here, but they used this as part of the set design for Harry Potter. So I got like a lot of hits. People are going berserk over this. It was great. In Cuba, while I was walking around looking for baseball stuff, I'm looking for buildings and things to shoot. And one of the ways I shoot is, and I teach this when I do my workshops, is I work from the back forward. I find a good background and wait for something to happen in front of it. Of course, what ruins most of your pictures, you'll get a great moment happening, but the background sucks. So the way to remedy that, find a good background, let stuff happen in front of you. And also, it's psychologically, when you approach people, if you're walking around with your camera and there's some people standing around and you approach them and start taking pictures, you've invaded their space. If I set myself up at a place that's a good background with my cameras, people know I'm there. If they're going to walk in, they're now walking into my space. So psychologically, it's an easier way to shoot people. Plus, I've got myself a nice background. So not just exotic places. This was in New York on 23rd Street. And, saw a puddle, saw some nice reflections, waited for a cab to come by to get some light streaking, did a nice shot. 2 weeks ago in Morocco, I was at a leather tannery. It's actually pretty disgusting. These guys are in there and it smells horrible, and I bought a belt there that still has a slight smell of the tannery because to soften the leather hides, they use ammonia, and they get the ammonia out of pigeon shit. Could I say that word? You did. Okay. How about pigeon poop? It's more alliteration. That's good. Okay. Pigeon poop. So yeah, but it made a color. I knew it'd be a good Instagram. I was looking at possibly doing a close-up of one of these guys, but I know from my followers, close-ups of people aren't as effective as patterns and things. So I've learned something. This is a view of the Medina in Fez, Morocco. Just nice colors, and everyone commented on all the dishes, right? Here you are, ancient city with all the satellite dishes. So this is my Instagram feed. We did this screenshot a couple of days ago. I think I'm almost at 80,000 now on my personal feed. But here are some of the, I'll tell you about Tom Cruise in a second. But anyway, this is a new world for me. And I think if you want to be a photographer, you have to be curious. Curiosity opens the world up to you. You have to let me see. You have to stay curious, you have to stay interested, and you have to have fun. And then you'll be inspired, and you'll make great pictures. And if you don't start making great pictures, you're in big trouble because there's competition. Everyone see the story in the New York Times about animal photography? These animals going around with cameras, taking pictures, right? So here's some pot-bellied pig with a GoPro on its back. I don't know where the future is, but hopefully it doesn't end there. All right, so how am I doing, Katrin? Perfect timing, right? I'm looking at, we got a little clock here that's telling me stuff.
Do we have time for questions?
Oh, I have time for questions. Let me tell you the Tom Cruise story first, real quick. I was at taking this workshop in Morocco, and we were on our bus on this really narrow, winding mountain road, really thin, and there's a huge traffic jam. Why? There are all these production vehicles, more production vehicles than I've ever seen in New York. And then I saw motorcycles on weird things, weird trailers. I think they were shooting a motorcycle action scene. And someone had said, you know, they're filming Mission Impossible 5 here in Morocco. And we're going down the road, and one of my students was shooting with her camera just outside the bus window, everything going on. And when she got back, she's looking through her pictures, and she saw one that looked like Tom Cruise, but it looked pretty young, and there was no one around him. And I said, no, that's a stunt double. He's got, you know, no security, nothing around him, and he's too young. Let's see if we get, and then she's kept going through her stuff and magnifying it, and she found this picture. Here's a bodyguard, here's Tom Cruise looking about the right age. So it was really funny, right? You know, she was so excited, we all got excited. Okay, questions?
If you read the book of Tony Wheeler about the way he established Lonely Planet, etc., you get that feeling that the travel book industry goes slowly down and down, and he keeps telling in the old days how much time they had to publish a travel book, and now how under what squeeze they are in terms of budget and time to produce a travel guide. What's the situation? How do you perceive the future of National Geographic in that sense?
Well, I think the magazine publishing has to change. There's no doubt about it. You know, you pay for ink, you pay for paper, you pay for postage, and it's very expensive. So things are moving towards the web, things are moving towards apps. And also the nice thing is, because of the web, you can do video, and video is important in storytelling. Video tells great stories. Still pictures create more emotion and capture that 250th of a second. They steal a piece of time that people always remember. Videos, you don't really remember the imagery in the video, you just remember the story. So I think that's what's going to happen with most magazines. And the magazines have to readjust their business plans, how they're doing a lot of things. But that's what will happen.
Ira, this past weekend during your workshop, you had a photo that you had taken. I believe it was in Morocco. A young lady walking past a busy newsstand. There's a fellow in the background with the black and white shirt that you didn't like. When you're shooting, do you shoot, say, on a single frame or a continuous frame, or you go back and forth to capture multiple things at a time?
I usually will leave the camera on continuous, but I tend to just do one frame at a time. But then if something happens, I'm ready to hold the button down. Now, if I'm shooting sports or some action happening, I will be shooting continuous. But just moments and people and emotions and expressions, I don't want to just go. I'm just like, get it. Then if something really starts happening, I could let it go faster, but a lot of times you'll miss a moment unless you're really going fast enough. But I'd like to be ready to shoot single frame, and then hold my finger down to let it run. Any more questions?
I have a question. Tom, you have a question?
Sure. You're allowed to ask, Tom.
Hey, I wondering about the baseball series and what because you're a baseball fan in general too. How would you contrast baseball here in the U.S. versus Cuba and just the culture around it?
Well, baseball in Cuba, the pro teams are really semi-pro. They don't make a lot of money, and I would say that a lot of the teams aren't as good as our professional teams, but that being said, they have a lot of good players, and there have been a lot of players that have defected to the U.S. and suddenly from making $40 a month are making $40 million. So it's a change in cultural things. And baseball in this country gets overshadowed by other professional sports and the fact that baseball in this country is such a big business. In Cuba, it's not a big business. There's one of the guys I'm working with a little bit is a writer for the Daily News, and he said to me, baseball is still, in Cuba, is still back in its pure form. And that's what I love about it. It's not, so I'm not looking at it as an athletic endeavor. So I'm not doing that much action, although when I go back, I'll have to do some action pictures, because when the Ministry of Sports said, great, do this project, they thought I was going to be looking for action pictures. And I had to explain to them that a guy sliding into second base, a close-up of a guy in a uniform sliding into second base, it could look like New York, Boston, Havana, the Dominican Republic, Venezuela. It doesn't, the action part like that doesn't tell the story. That's why when I shot at the stadium, I was looking for more shape and color and shadow and that kind of feel, because they have that there.
It's a little bit of a follow-up. Do they follow U.S. baseball?
Oh yeah, they do follow U.S. baseball, especially their players that have defected. They really like to. No, but they do follow U.S. baseball. They love the Yankees. They love the Boston Red Sox. They love the older traditional teams that have been around forever.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay. Now
Now we got some hands. Good. Action.
So I've seen that you've traveled a lot in Asia, and I just want to ask, what was the most important thing you've learned from your travels there?
The most important thing I've learned from my travels in Asia has been that it's truly a different culture. That you cannot take Western ways of thinking and work that way in Asia. You're in someone else's culture, and you have to deal with them in their own hometown or ways. So and I love the food. That's the other thing. There's a question back here.
I've actually got two questions. Oh no. The first one is, how do you deal with getting permissions of the people to shoot? Do you ask them for permission? Do you get releases, etc.? And the other one, you made that comment about going to New Jersey with a crew, and I was just wondering what sort of crew you're traveling with.
Okay, getting permission from people, 30 years of experience of learning how to deal with people. My life, my job, what I do is dealing with people, reading body language, knowing how to interact with people. So that's what I do. The other question is about a crew. So on big assignments, I'll travel with a lot of lighting equipment, and I'll take one assistant, my key lighting assistant from here, and then when I get to where I'm going, I'll get a fixer, a local guy who will get permissions, will open the doors, that's of the culture, that knows his way around. and maybe I'll get a second lighting person or someone to help haul stuff. So that's a small crew for editorial. If I was doing a commercial thing, we'd be having digital techs, art directors, clients, then you have to feed all those people on set, you'd have craft services and catering, so things start expanding. And I don't like to work with that large a group of people on an editorial assignment, because you lose that one-on-one relationship with your subject.
Do you have a question? Okay.
Thank you for your time. I wonder one thing, when you're assigned for a project from the magazine, how detailed is the brief for you? Like, do they tell you like, okay, there's a shoot in India for this festival and these are the things that we actually expect from you? Or did they just tell you that, you know, we want you to go to India, I'm just giving it an example, and you're kind of like just free fall, flow and just take photos as you want? Or there's kind of like some specifications, like do you do research, or I don't know.
Okay, so when I go on an assignment, how much am I told what to shoot?
Yeah.
And how much free?
How detailed is the brief? Do they tell you something where they just,
Well, there's usually a photo editor I'm working with, and he and I'll discuss. We're talking all the time, we're emailing all the time about what needs to be done, what we need for the story. And it'll be, if it can be detailed, it will be. But what you find out is that whatever you think you need to shoot and whatever you think is going to be there, when you get there, it's totally different. As much research as you do, it's always a surprise when you get somewhere. So you try to go out with a structure, an idea of what you need for your story, what's going to move it ahead, and then you get there and you go, whoops, this is different, I got to do this. And that's where experience comes in, that's where knowing your client comes in, and that's where when I'm out in the field, I don't email back, oh my God, this isn't happening, what should I do? I decide what to do. And I just hope that my decision is going to be something they could live with. And if not, it's too bad, because that's what it is. I have the experience out there. I'm in the field, I have the experience, they have to trust me.
Hi. How do you find your local fixers when you travel to different countries? Are these...
How do I find my local fixes when I travel? It's actually very simple, because most of the time I've got a friend or colleague that's been there, and I get to him and I say, hey, who'd you use as your fixer when you were in Bhutan? Or someone will ask me, Ira, who'd you use your fixer, who was your fixer in Peru? And so we'll share that information with each other.
Okay.
That's the easiest way to do it.
And your fixer acts as a translator when you're trying to connect with your subject, because obviously there's a language
Right,
barrier.
the fixer, if there's a language issue, which there usually is, the fixer has to, I don't like it, but then the fixer gets in between you and your subject. So you have to have a fixer that thinks the way you are and has a personality like you. And a good example, when you asked me about Asia. So I was doing a big story in Japan, and my fixer there was terrific, because usually in Japan you go to these, when you first meet people, you have to go to a very formal dinner, and everyone's, and I need to get things going. And my fixer in Japan was great because he was Japanese and he knew all the formalities, but he knew how photographers thought, and he had a personality like mine where he was just charming, got people to laugh, loosened them up, which is unusual. And he was able to make things happen. Whereas I've been other places where I had a fixer once in Greece, and she was terrible. She just couldn't, she'd come back and say, I'd say we were doing this olive oil thing, and I said, okay, those women down there working, it's a great picture, just ask them if I could take a picture. And she'd come back and say, no, you can't, they won't let you take the picture. I said, no is not an answer we put up with. Figure out how to get them to say yes. So you learn. We got one in the back? Okay.
Hi, Ira, you must take hundreds of, or maybe even more, of pictures in some of these stories. How much time do you spend on editing, or does do your editors edit your pictures, and how much time is of your
How much time do I must take thousands of pictures on stories, which is true, and I have to spend a lot. I have to look at every picture I take. I can't just trust someone else's judgment. I'll go through every picture I take, and I have a whole workflow of how I select my pictures, and I will throw out, out of focus, eyes closed, goofy looks, but most of the other pictures I'll keep, and I'll have a certain pecking order of what they are. I'll keep a certain amount in my permanent collection, but 5 years from now, I may be shooting something, I may have a different technique, or I may need something for a specific project, and I would go back and try to dig out a picture. So it's a process. It's a whole workflow process, and you have to have a great workflow because you have hundreds of thousands of images floating around now instead of in my little yellow boxes in like space somewhere in the in my RAID box in this hard drive. Follow me on Instagram, right?
Yes.
I want to get up to 80,000 this week.
All right, then you'll get a free
It's
T-shirt.
Ira Block Photo. Twitter, it's Ira Photo, and somewhere I'm on Facebook. I have a fan page or something. So,
We will stalk you.
yes.
Okay. Anyway, seriously, Ira, it's inspiring, fun, insightful. Thank you so much for taking the time.